Give it up. Starting with the lovely and talented Gates Mcfadden. John, do you know Gates?
I brought a magazine because I don't think anybody's going to want to talk to me.
John, do you know Gates?
John, do you know Gates?
Yes, I know Gates. I know all these people. We all know each other.
Sid, do you know Bob? You know
No one introduced me to all the green ladies, though.
Oh, I mean, we can do that later. I mean, like...
We operate on each other all the time.
Well, Hal, first of all, like when you look back on like the late '90s, there was so much activity going on the lot with all the shows, with Next Gen leading to DS9, leading to Voyager, leading to Enterprise. And like when you look at what's going on now, there's once again so much activity.
The future is rosy.
What about for you, Gates? I mean, when Next Gen premiered, when Next Gen started in '87,
I was only like 12. But
yeah, yes. But just to see sort of how it's like grown and evolved and continue to do that, especially now. Like, what's your take on just how you're part of something that's so big and it continues to grow?
Well, I think for sure, I was not at all aware of the power of Star Trek when I first started filming. I had no clue. I had never watched the original Star Trek until I actually was part of Next Gen, and then I started watching Star Trek. But it's been through meeting the fans at conventions that the power of the show and the significance of it, the impact, has really come home for me. I've met so many people who watched it when they were children, and they're now surgeons and nurses and, geologists and biologists, and how fabulous is that? It's really profoundly moving and also inspiring because, as Kate said at the end, there's been so much that's gone on. It's been great to have strong role models for everybody, and to have a show that really is so open compared to many shows of that time, of the late '80s, and so that's very powerful to me. And just one last thing, and then I'll shut up. But
keep going.
I think that it's very amazing what's been happening with NASA and all of the medical things that are going on with the discoveries and the difficulties of long-term being out into space. And those are things that really, our show so ties in with that it's really cool, to sort of talk to some of the real people who worked on the Apollo, the original ones, and they're talking about, well, this is what the problem was, or the astronaut who's just been up there for 6 months, and they have problems because there's a genetic mutation, It's pretty cool. Star Trek, it rocks.
Star Trek rocks, yeah. So, Bob, you're very active with the JPL, NASA, and the future of all that, tying into what Gates was just talking about. Talk about how, that grew out of your involvement with Star Trek. John, what do you...
The show that killed the franchise.
Not where I was going, John, but having said that, but bringing up Enterprise, like, what do you see? How do you see the identity of Enterprise being different from the identity of Voyager, Next Gen, DS9?
Oh, it's tricky. I mean, we were a little bit of the redheaded stepsister for a variety of reasons. UPN.
Careful on the redheaded stepsister.
Well, from here you look kind of blonde. I'm sorry. Is that just me? No.
Gray, baby.
Yeah, and rocking it, itself, as a network, was going off the air, there were a lot of reasons why our show, I don't think, really caught on. I think as it progressed, I think we began to kind of find ourselves. But while I have a lot of affection for the show and a lot of affection for my castmates, I think there were issues with the show that had to do with network interference. It had to do with the reality that our show was on when 9/11 occurred, and I think some of the political slant that, to be very candid with you, was forced on the show, to my taste, moved us in a direction that I found problematic. I like to be very honest about this. There was an episode in the 3rd season that I think condoned torture, which I objected to. In a lot of ways, I think our show had some problems.
But, you know, they all
So
start.
take that, gosh.
Well, hey, well, John,
Rebound from that.
I will
And
do
I
that.
waste my life watching baseball instead of putting small crafts into space. I'm a failure. Thank God I brought a magazine.
I think all the shows.
I hear there are...
We were talking about that in the line.
I couldn't let this go.
Your timing was impeccable.
I was watching backstage. You know, I wanted to make sure I didn't interrupt anybody's answers. Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me crash. I just wanted to say hello.
No, stay.
So happy
Stay.
you're here.
Stay.
I was upset you weren't.
Stay, right?
Right.
I'll stay a bit. I'll stay a bit.
Well, okay. Welcome.
Thanks.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm good.
Okay, so we were talking about, my question was about how all the different shows have an identity and they're all separate from they all stand alone. So, like, what do you see as, even though you're in the thick of it now, as it's evolving, but what do you see now as the identity of Discovery?
Well, it's hard to say, right? I think part of what's great is when you can look back and say what was our overarching theme, because you've finished it, right? But I think if I'm just gonna put it out there, I think I would say that we're really exploring and expanding this idea of diversity, right? And really taking and looking at it head on. Thank you. You know, and there's an overarching theme of feminism and empowerment, and really looking across differences about how we find common ground in order to solve our problems, which is probably something we should be talking about right now. So I mean, I'll leave it at that, because I think we have 25 more seasons to go. Yes. So maybe we'll look back and it will have been something else. But I think at the moment, I think we are reveling in this opportunity to show all of the spectrum of the human experience, whether that be LGBTQ or feminists or people of color. You know, I think we are really expanding and really looking head on at what it means to be a diverse culture, and celebrating our differences, and instead of being afraid of them.
You know, that's what it's all about.
That's what I thought of right off the top of my head.
That was pretty good. Very good. That was pretty good. See, this is what makes this just a great panel. But so you refer, John, to Enterprise as, okay, his words, the redheaded stepchild, not mine. Okay, I love redheaded stepchildren, but for a while, people did sort of think of Deep Space Nine as, middle child syndrome. But the thing is, and especially once we saw, just with the perspective of that wonderful documentary, What We Left Behind, was just this fantastic. Deep Space Nine was the first of the Star Trek shows to, for a show that was, more or less stationary. It did go farther. It did take on, it was a riskier show. And Ira and all the producers and writers on that show really went with it. And it was so topical. And I was talking yesterday about how you have 2 episodes like Past Tense, which were way ahead of their time. Talk about how that show in particular.
I'm not the expert, but I will, because I think Stephen Ira Bear, and the producers who were in charge of that show, Michael Piller, the late, great Michael Piller, were riding that horse in a direction that we didn't really know, we just trusted. And they had a plan to do something that no other show had really done at that time, but shows were exploring, like X-Files and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was a long-form dramatic arc. Because every show was designed to go into a system of television, as you all know, where you start on some prime time area, and then you repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. It doesn't matter what order you show the shows in. It's called, they strip it. I think that's the technical term. Does it go into strip? And all the shows before that were designed as standalone stories, and Deep Space Nine certainly wasn't. It was a long-form arc, and for that reason, it was very unpopular from the executive level. I think that may have had something to do with the fact that the press thought it was a problematic child, because it wasn't delivering the commercial promise that certainly my favorite show was The Next Generation. And that show, at the time, I just loved that show. And that certainly was delivering on that front. So I think there's probably a little bit of politics going on there. And also because it was a brave new frontier. And as I say, only shows like X-Files and Buffy, both of which came kind of at or after Deep Space Nine had already started this ball rolling. But when you look at television history, sorry, I'm just going to bore you for one more second.
No, please.
But listening to experts on television history, they won't cite Deep Space Nine. They'll cite other shows. Because Deep Space Nine was Star Trek. And Star Trek was deeply uncool. I mean, what everybody in this room knows. But if you were sitting here in 1990, 1992, you were...
We were.
Yeah. Everybody in this room was the red-headed stepchild. And now look, the world is copying you. The world is emulating you.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I was talking to somebody on the way over in one of the vans today, that when I first was doing Star Trek, and I met Rod Roddenberry, and he had a friend, Jules Urbach, who was this genius computer programmer, and he had done all these games for Sony, and he was like 17. But I went over to visit their place, and at that time, to be a nerd was to be in a dark room with floor to ceiling, all the way around the room, computer stuff. And it was like you were going into a cave, and it seemed strange if you weren't into it. And it was like, oh God, they're nerds. Now everyone wants to be a nerd. We're happy to be nerds, And it also is the same thing that happened like with the character of Wesley Crusher. In the beginning, the original Star Trek fans just were like, who is this kid who is saving the ship and blah, blah, blah. And of course, the mother had taught him everything. But at any rate, but that's, that just happened, right? But I think what's incredible is now all the people my age are always asking their kids how to fix their app and how to do this and they're saving our ass every day with the with our iPhones. So it kind of was prophetic, the way the show was, and I think that what I remember hearing some of the writers talking about with Deep Space Nine was that our characters we could have conflicts with them, we'd always be friendly. We'd never really go anywhere with that. We were team players. But they wanted to explore what would it be like if it was the same thing. You're in a place that you have to be there for a long time, and you don't always get along quite so fabulously all the time. And that's what Star Trek is so cool about. They will take the risk to explore something, take an idea, let's see what happens. And that's why I thought it was really a fabulous experiment and a wonderful show.
Bob, you look like you got something to say on that.
Well, Voyager, of course, was the first Star Trek show with a female captain. I constantly point that out to Doctor Who fans who only got a female doctor last year. And and to me, what's so wonderful about the Star Trek franchise and why it continues to reinvent itself and to stay fresh in the marketplace is how it takes something that you all love and you're all familiar with, and that same passion for adventure and going farther, and then it mixes the deck up. It adds a new element every time. My character was the first outsider doctor. Being in artificial intelligence, I got to deal with all of those entitlement stories that normally fell on Spock originally, and then Odo, and not on the medical character. So that they take they always the way they reposition and re-examine issues they've examined before through a different prism is what keeps the show fresh. We thought we were going to have the first gay character on Voyager. There was whisperings and rumors, and we were all ready and hoping for it, and then it never quite happened, and I don't know why.
Dr. Phlox was the first bi character on Star Trek. No, I had husbands and wives, and I think people assumed that it was the traditional, actual pattern, but it wasn't. I had husbands and wives.
You were a bigamist.
Well, yes, but that's not what I'm really referring to right now. I'm talking about the fact that the first bi character was not appreciated. It was Dr. Phlox.
Go back to your magazine, John.
I think we should give him his appreciation right now.
Porthos also swung both ways.
A lot of sex going on.
It's a lot. This is a great panel.
Yeah, we only 4 years. I know. For all the sex, we only lasted 4 years. I don't understand.
But they were 4 great years. I mean, like, listen, Enterprise especially, I mean, look, I know this has been said everywhere.
I wasn't fishing.
Listen, John, the 4th season of Enterprise was magnificent. I mean, that was the show. That was when it hit its stride. You know, I mean, DS9, I think that like season 3, same thing with Next Gen, same thing with. Well, I liked Voyager from the beginning, so you got that going. But when did you think, Sid? When did you start to feel that the dynamic, getting the feel for your character, getting the feel for everybody else, the relationships, like when Bashir and O'Brien started to become buddies. Like, when did you start to feel like we got this? Like, I think we're good now. I think we're going in the right direction, and we got this.
You know, one of the things about being on a TV series, and I'm not sure this is a universally, I'm not sure everybody on this panel would feel the same way, put it this way, is that when you are certainly an actor in my 20s, fairly naive, I suppose, working on a TV series like Star Trek, which I had no idea what a big deal that was before I came to America. I was spending all my time just making friends with the cast. I was working out my interpersonal relationships, not really caring about my character. It seemed to me the most important thing was to just get along. And I let the writers deal with the character, and everything just came from that. And I think we, in Hollywood, sometimes are a little spoiled in terms of actors, because we turn up and we don't try hard enough to get on very well with each other. And the amount of bickering and the amount of fighting is just an insult to the people watching the show. So we worked really hard at just getting on. And I think that love, if it is love, certainly that attempt to love, ended up on the show and coming out the TV screen at people. And that's where we are.
But I feel like that's happening now with Discovery.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what mystical thing happened in the casting rooms, over there, but somehow they have accumulated this group of people who just intrinsically and automatically felt fond for each other. And maybe it's because we're all in Toronto together and we have each other there, but we're very tight and we authentically like each other, and we each can't wait to work with each other. It's like we have our meetings with the writers, and it was like, who do you want to work with? And I was like, I mean, all of them. And I'm happy to say that, you know, I'm getting a lot more time with the rest of the cast this coming season. So that would be
Season 3, which is in production now.
right now.
Okay, just putting that out there. Wait, you were all part of a Star Trek series that has been preceded by a Star Trek series. So in each way, you're all standing on the shoulders of giants.
Well, I think, you know, I think the fact that we get to do this serialized version of Star Trek is very much due to what happened on DS9 and the risks that they took in that storytelling format. So I'm grateful to them because, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Alex Kurtzman, who said, you know, the difference is, you know, in telling a serialized story is that at the end of, or at the beginning of the next episode, we remember what happened, right? So it's a continuation. You don't forget about, you know, what had just happened to you. And we very much take up most of the episodes moments after the last episode ended. So, you know, it changes the way the storytelling is.
And that's just the season 6 and 7 of DS9 were way ahead of their time. But Gates, I mean, like when Next Gen started, I mean, you know, to put it bluntly, was it scary to just sort of like go in and be like, okay, like here we go, we're gonna, you know, do a whole new Star Trek show, follow the original series?
Well, I mean, I didn't know what warp speed was at that time, but I think that when I spoke with Gene and he cast me, he really said, I want this show to be really different. I want it to be closer to what real life would be if you were up there. And I want there to be families, and I want there to be older people, and I don't want it just, you know, only young, sexy people. And I think it obviously had to do also with his getting older and his having a son who was so smart and just seeing the world. We all are evolving all the time, and I think all the shows, just the way we are so sophisticated as watchers on Netflix. You know, like, can't you tell right away whether you're gonna, you know, what's gonna happen next? And when you don't know what's gonna happen next, you go, this is a good show. And I think that it's pretty amazing what they've done with all the different series. You know, it was a whole new world for us, really. We had to live, before they padded spacesuits, we were in that first season, we all looked pretty pathetic. You know, now people know you better either train or that all of us, by the time we were in like 4th season, we all looked like action figures, you know? And that was all new to us. You know, you were putting on something and you're like, wow, I look really good, you know? How did that happen? But,
First by fat guy. On Star Trek.
You're crushing it.
Thank you.
Crushing it.
First and last, probably.
But Bob, for you too, I mean, like, you had to, you know, start something fresh following 3 other shows. I mean, did you find that, like, a scary thing or exhilarating?
I mean, there was a certain trepidation among the cast that I clearly remember before we went on the air. We were all wondering whether we would be embraced by the loyal fan base. I think probably all the shows go through that phase early on. But once you are embraced, it kind of knocks the wind out of you. You know, I likened it to premiering in a Star Trek show is like boarding a bus that's going 80 miles an hour. And it's a little shock to jump on, but once you're on, it's a very nice ride. I remember that Armin Shimmerman prepped our cast for what we should expect.
What did he say?
Well, he basically, he prepared us for the convention phenomenon. I remember when I got the job, my agent said, you got the part and you got your first 2 convention offers. So it does change, it changes your life, and it makes you, Star Trek is shown all around the world, so it makes you a recognizable face around the world. It's a bit of a shock. But to me, the greatest dividend really has been, and Gates touched on this early on in one of her answers, we meet so many people who were inspired by Star Trek, and they look at us as part of that continuum of inspiration. And I have had the opportunity, I've sat on stage with 5 men who walked on the moon. It's an extraordinary, for someone who loves science to begin with, it's an extraordinary opportunity that we have to meet the real engineers and explorers and scientists and mathematicians and all the people that make the space program happen, that make future medical devices, non-invasive medical devices, just like on Star Trek. We're going to have more and more apps that connect, for home diagnosis, that connect to apps to your phone, and it's going to be scary, and there are going to be problems to work out about medical privacy with digital medicine and about all sorts of things. No one wants to scan themselves with a home tricorder and have it say, you have terminal cancer, you've got 20 minutes left. There has to be a way to mediate this information that people can get directly now because of the sophistication of the incredible technology that's going to become available to all of us. It's a great thing for emergencies, for a sick mom who at 4 in the morning with a baby with 104-degree fever, to be able to get some immediate recommendation on how to lower your baby's fever at 4 in the morning when you can't get a doctor there. This is all a great blessing to society, but it does bring problems and other issues that we have to examine.
I mean, they do have, SpaceX has a medical tricorder that was developed, and it's incredible. And there are so many, the robotics are phenomenal that are happening, absolutely phenomenal. I think we are going to find that there will be ways. It's going to be about dealing with the processing and how are we going to deal with the stress if we are not connected. It's trying to keep our community, and the Star Trek community is a pretty amazing community, and I think that's one of the very positive things about it, because we do tie in, as you say, with NASA and the space program. And when I've talked to astronauts, they also say how important we as characters were to them, because they needed to use their imagination when they're up in space. They're only doing their tasks, and they are isolated. It's important to really have ways to imagine things, and that's where you can, literally correspond with an astronaut. Some of us have from the space station, and it's really awesome. And you're like, why are they talking to me? I've never been off, the ground. But it's because they're thinking they're Captain Picard. That's why. And it's pretty strong suggestion.
When you play a character that inspires real people to do real professions, like you have, I mean, it's got to be so like gratifying, like you can't believe it.
The first phone call I got when I was cast on Discovery was from my ex-boyfriend, who called to tell me, I've told this to Gates, was to say, you're going to inspire people to become doctors, because he was inspired to become a doctor by Crusher. And it was the very first message I got. So, greetings from Dr. Rivoli.
But because we are actors here,
My problem is I played a lot of serial killers, so.
And I've inspired a lot of people to become holograms.
I've inspired a lot of people to be gay, but that has had nothing to do with the show. That was just my gift.
Somewhere out there is a gay hologram serial killer. The best of Star Trek. Best panel ever.
Right, well, all the redheaded stepdaughters are all with the stepchildren are all in my group, okay?
Well, this panel has turned into quite a thing here, so let's start taking questions from you. You are first.
Thank you. Hi guys, my name is Morgan. It's a pleasure to meet those of you I haven't met yet. And so you guys all talked a lot about kind of the journeys of your characters, or kind of representative of the whole cast, how your shows were different from the other shows of your co-stars next to you. So I'm curious though about your own personal journeys. Just what about your show and the uniqueness of it and your personal journey through it has really stuck with you and resonated with you since you were on it?
Great question. Sid, let's start with you.
Thank you. You know what? I kind of touched on it on my last answer, which is about trying to get on, just trying to hang in there. And Los Angeles is a very difficult city to live in, and it was particularly hard in the 90s. Actors were really stuff, you know, people go through at Kmart during the sales and throw whatever they don't like over their shoulder and like rummage around for something interesting at Costco. And if you're not the perfect tomato, you are not getting chosen for that role. And not being the perfect tomato is always a problem for actors. And so I just was trying to hang on, and didn't really like being famous, and didn't really want anything to do with lots of people coming up to me and saying things. Partly because I didn't really understand what I was getting into as an actor. So I was just a 22-year-old to 28-year-old, 32-year-old kid who just got through. I know there are people here who are 25 and going, 32-year-old kid? I was just basically hanging on. I don't have a philosophical understanding of what the show meant to me and how I developed as a person during it. I was really just living day to day.
How about you, Gates?
I'm not trying to patronize, you know, everybody, but I really think the thing that has come home to me the most has been that through the show, through my involvement with the show, not only have I developed a community with fellow actors, because you know, we see each other outside of the conventions sometimes, but also that there's something really hopeful because I have met so many extraordinary fans who actually are people who are changing the world, who are doing things, who are full of hope and you know, possibility. And honestly, I don't throw this out without meaning. It really gives me an inspiration. I am truly inspired by so many fans that I have met. People who've had 100 operations and come back from, you know, Iraq, and you know, people who have had 9 foster homes and they see my character as a mother figure because I was on the TV and they watched it together. It's more the journeys they have taken because I was just doing a job, but they were really living it, and it really moves me deeply, and so I really feel that gives me the greatest hope and inspiration, has just been meeting the people that I've met through the years. And I was the last one in my cast to do conventions because I was terrified of doing them. I was terrified of all of you. I was, and I was so wrong. And so it was a humbling and wonderful thing for me to learn. So thank you.
Bob,